guys, it's Dr. Bickling from Own It Dental. As always, here's my contact information if you need to get a hold of me. If you guys are enjoying these videos, please do hit that like button, hit that thumbs up button. It's right down below. It only takes you a second. It's not mandatory, but it's voluntary. Speaking of voluntary, today we're going to talk about expanding your hours. And sometimes you may have to do it voluntarily as opposed to mandatory. So let's dig into it. All right. Today I'm going to tell you a little story. Back in 2017, 2018, I was doing a lot of conferences with larger DSOs. DSOs, of course, that's corporate dentistry, dental support organizations. And I'd go meet with all the big corporations and find out what was new in the dental industry as far as corporate dentistry was concerned. One day I was sitting at a luncheon at a big round table with a couple of different DSOs. On one side of me was the CEO of a DSO, mid-sized DSO down in Georgia. They had about 50 offices, and his chief financial officer was on the other side of me. So we're all just kind of making small talk, and the chief financial officer asked me who I was and what my deal was. So I told him, my name's Dr. Bickling, and my offices are open 7 days a week. We're open 12 hours a day. And he's like, wow, that's impressive. I said, he goes, how did you manage that? That seems difficult. And I said, well, it was difficult because we weren't always open 7 days a week. At one point, we were only open 6 days a week. And when we made that change, I lost about 40% of my staff. And he looked at me, he goes, how did you not see that coming? And I said, well, I kind of knew I was going to lose some staff. I just didn't know how much. It's hard to predict how much you're going to lose. He goes, well, you lost 40% of your staff, and how did you ever recover from that? I said, well, it was easy. I only had one office at the time, and I only had 10 employees, so I only really lost 4. So all I had to do was hire 4 employees, and I was right back up to full service. So in any case, within just about 2 or 3 weeks, we were right back up and running with all of our staff fully staffed. And then we were open 7 days a week, and things were going normal. But, it kind of reminded me that, sometimes if you're going to be making some of these changes, like expanding your hours, sometimes it's better to do it when you're small. This chief financial officer of this DSO, they had 50 offices. And could you imagine them losing 25, 30, 40% of their employees? There's no way that they could recover from that. So there's something to be said about being nimble and being agile when you're small. And that's the time to make these changes. Now, if I was to go back in history and do it all over again, I probably wouldn't make it a mandatory change, just like I did, because even though we only lost 4 employees, that was almost half of our staff. And that was a rough few weeks there until we could get fully staffed again and get everybody trained up. So if I was going to do it differently, especially when I'm a small office, I first might make these changes voluntarily. I might ask to say, hey, is there somebody here that might want to work Friday evenings, Saturdays, or even Sundays, and I might have it as voluntary. This is a little distracting, so let's get out of that way. Of course, if you're ever going to make people work outside of normal dental hours, you need to compensate them more than somebody might get paid. Remember our internal and external fairness. If they could get paid the same or more to work fewer hours or better hours someplace else, they're going to take it. So if we are asking our staff to work evenings or weekends or Sundays, you're going to have to compensate them more. So you basically make it a voluntary thing where, hey, I'm thinking about opening up on Friday evenings, or I'm thinking about opening up on Sundays. If we paid each of you an additional $10 an hour, who would be willing to work Sundays? Or who would be willing to work Friday evenings? And just see who volunteers. Of course, the ideal scenario is, you would hopefully have a whole staff available, but you may not. You may only have 2 or 3. But then at least you know who's able to work those days and times and who wants to work those days and times. You may have to start small at first, but once you open those hours, then as you start to hire more staff in the future, you can start to fill in some of the gaps. But like I said, the important thing is if you're going to be making these changes, make them while you're small, because the bigger you get, the harder it is to turn. It's always easier to turn a little speedboat or a jet ski than it is a big ocean tanker. So in any case, if I was to go back in time, I would do it a little bit differently. If I was to expand my hours to evenings or weekends, or even on Sundays, 7 days a week, I might do it on a voluntary basis at first, and then go from there. Just kind of grow from there, and eventually it will just become normal. So sometimes when you're making these changes, make them voluntary at first. Of course, you have to compensate them. Give them the evenings and weekend bonuses, because if we're expecting more out of them, they're going to expect more in return too. So in any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Dr. Bickling, and there's my contact information, and I'll see you on the next one. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like it, go to ownitdental.com or click the link above and check out my services. I have dozens of hours of training videos and have negotiated reduced lab fees for all my clients. So if you want to get out of the dental chair and start owning your business, go to ownitdental.com and check out my services, and I'll see you soon.